Genesis, and a lavish Broadway musical. Queen Esther gets 10 chapters and an entire biblical book named after her. The story of King David spans 3 books of the Bible and then is recapped in 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Moses' story spans 4 lengthy books: Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Compared with other major biblical figures, Samson's story receives relatively little attention. Outside of the book of Judges, he appears only one other time in the Bible, in a passing reference to him buried in a laundry list of ancient heroes of faith in the New Testament. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 32. He is never mentioned in any ancient Egyptian or Mesopotamian literature outside of the Bible, and there is no archaeological evidence of his existence. Moreover, nothing in the few biblical descriptions of Samson's appearance accounts for his later racialization as black. The Bible never describes his eye color, skin color, hair texture, or phenotype. Despite later artistic interpretations of a pale-skinned Samson with a chiseled, muscular physique, biblical texts do not discuss his body. They mention only his hair styled in 7 locks. Judges chapter 16, verses 13 through 14 and verse 17, and that the Philistines put out his eyes after his capture. Judges chapter 16, verse 21 and 30. In contrast to Samson, biblical texts describe the future King Saul as tall and handsome, 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 2, and the future King David as a handsome lad with beautiful eyes, 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12. Although we might imagine Samson as tall and muscular because he performs feats of superhuman strength, biblical texts do not describe his physical frame or even his height. In contrast, when introducing Goliath, the Philistine giant who battles David, the biblical text provides his height and describes his heavy armor and thick weaponry. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 4 through 7. Despite this lack of physical description, the name Samson became linked with enslaved and free African Americans as early as the 18th century. For example, a document from the session of the Council of Maryland, held on May 17, 1738, requests a pardon for Negro Samson, a slave belonging to John Ryder, Esquire, now under sentence of death in Dorchester County. Also, a document from the session of South Carolina's Commons House of Assembly, held on January 31, 1754, describes a slaveholder named Mr. Robert Hume as the Negro Samson's master, and includes a resolution to pay £300 to Hume for the Negro man named Samson upon the said Negroes discovering the remedy for the bites of snakes. On February 5, 1788, the Council of Virginia issued a pardon to Negro Samson belonging to Mary Dixon under sentence of death by the judgment of James City County Court for burglary. The name Samson also appears in reference to presumably free persons of African descent in the 18th century. For example, Richard Allen, the founding bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and Absalom Jones, the first bishop of African descent in the Episcopal Church, mentioned a man named Samson in their book on people of African descent during Philadelphia's yellow fever epidemic of 1793. Regarding this Samson, they wrote, "A poor black man named Samson went constantly from house to house where distress was, and no assistance without fee or reward. He was smote with the disorder, and died. After his death, his family were neglected by those he had served." It is not surprising to find references to free and enslaved men of African descent named Samson in these 18th century documents. In colonial America, free and enslaved people were often named after characters from biblical texts or from Greek or Roman classical literature. There are records of enslaved and free persons of African descent named Abraham, Hagar, Hercules, Moses, Sarah, and many other names. Yet while many of these names come from the Bible,